you grew up one way, believing in the Second Amendment.
Yep.
You being a police officer, has it changed any of your views on guns?
I still say that people do have the right to own a gun, but responsibly and legally. You know, there's too many guns that are out there where we see guns with obliterated serial numbers. Well, we know that's not a legal gun. But then people that are getting charged with gun crimes, they do negotiate guilty pleas. They know that, you know what, they're probably going to get out in half the time. So it's like, where's the accountability start and where does it end?
This is gonna hurt. It's time for the Suffering Podcast.
Often, that which can save our lives can also cause the most damage. The benefits get outweighed easily when tragedy strikes. Life-saving quickly becomes life-taking. Prescription medications are responsible for saving millions of lives. Prescription medications are responsible for the untimely death of so many. Food is an essential necessity that we need to survive. Food is an addictive substance that, when abused, causes ravages to your body, making it almost unusable. A pencil is an essential communication tool used to convey our hopes, dreams, and feelings. A pencil misused by the media can destroy your life. Anything on earth can cause harm if the person wielding it wishes to do so. Putting an object in the hands of a wrong person will forever change the benefits that the object can provide. I'm Kevin Donaldson here with Mike Failace, and on this episode of the Suffering Podcast, we sit down with Dave Voorhees to discuss the suffering of guns. Dave's an avid crusader for something that he truly believes in. Thank you so much for traveling all this way to get here.
My pleasure.
Dave, you know this is going to be a couple screw-ups. I mean, it already happened already, but we could edit those out.
There's a screw-up sitting to the left and right of me right here. Thanks for coming all this way. We really appreciate it. Especially, it's nice to have another Philly fan.
Yeah.
Yeah, see?
Yep, Phillies are playing tonight.
All of a sudden, I am not the only one here.
The Mets won 10-2 today.
Yeah,
I'm not a Met fan.
Sun shines on a cat's ass every once in a while.
Hey, the Mets got a better record than the Yankees now.
Well, that's not saying much for the Yankees.
Yeah,
Mets are
right.
like a glorified minor league
let's stop
team.
talking about baseball. We got bigger fish to fry here.
We got bigger guns to discuss.
Yeah, right.
Every week, Dave, we take a question from our audience on something that they would like to hear. This week's message comes from Jennifer, and it says, how do you stay open to new ideas? I thought this was apt for the discussion that we're going to have today because it's a tough discussion to have. And as you know, we don't discuss politics on this. We have pretty open minds when it comes to that stuff. And this is going to be a dance today to stay away from the political arena. But how do you maintain an open mind when there's a belief that you're strong and steadfast to?
So it's definitely a good question. I would say for me, you got to look at it from just because someone disagrees with you doesn't make them right and you wrong, or vice versa. I don't like what you're saying, so I'm right because I disagree with you. So a lot of times what I think of is, all right, how do we come together on this? What is the best option? If that makes sense.
Mike, what do you think?
It's really finding common ground. We see it in law enforcement all the time. You go into a place and you have your way you think you're going to attack the situation. Someone else comes in and says, well, why don't we do it this way? The four eyes are always better than two.
So it's funny you said that because when I was on, I had a second job and it was computer police management software, digital police management. Now it's in every police department. But when I started, it was just working its wave in. There were some police departments that were still pen and paper. And I would go, my value there was another cop talking to another cop on how this is going to make your life better, easier, and more effective. And I had some grizzled old timers.
The dinosaurs.
Yeah, the grizzled old timers are like, kid, you're not going to show me how to do it. And it was real simple to me. Here's how I approached it. If this doesn't make your life easier, then don't use it. Yep. At this time, there was no hard and fast rule that you had to use report writing in there. So I said, don't use it. But I guarantee you're going to see over time that these guys who are using this are going to get done faster, and it's going to look more professional. And that's showing them the value, but that comes through education,
It's like when e-tickets came out.
Oh, yeah.
I wrote them all out.
Yep.
Screw this e-ticket.
Yeah.
If it didn't make your life easier, what's the point of using it?
It probably would make my life easier, but it made me more aggravated too. Screw it, I'll just do it.
As closed as your mind is, I want to know on certain things you're pretty open-minded. How do you maintain an open mind?
Like I said, you have to look at all perspectives. Before you say it, I'm not the smartest guy out there, so someone else is going to have.
I'm glad you finally identified that.
So, someone's going to have an opinion that's better than mine. I mean, as cops, we're always strong-willed people, and we always think we're right, and we always think we can handle things. But someone else may have a better idea. You just got to go in open-minded and weigh out all this. And like you said, try to make things easier. Make them easier for yourself.
I try never to be married to my opinions because opinions can be very, very dangerous. I try to take all the educational materials that I have and be the curator of my own information rather than having somebody tell me what they're supposed to do. When you see somebody that is so avidly, on a whole, this is not every time, that is so avidly for or against something, one of their opinions, they're usually missing some piece of information. They really are. And what that does is it opens up for you to come across that one person who is truly educated in the subject, and they're going to burn you, and they're going to make you look like an ass.
Yep.
So we try not to stay married. I try not to stay married to my opinions on a lot of different things. We've had people on this show here that I don't agree with their lifestyle, and I don't have to affirm their lifestyle. But ultimately, I do have to accept.
I tried to stay married to things too, but that didn't work. But anyway,
Had to throw that one in there.
some people are so closed-minded and set in their ways. They don't want to hear your opinion.
They want to hear.
They want to hear what fits their agenda.
Correct, and they want you to reverberate their opinion, and if you don't, that's when arguments happen. And that's why to certain things in this world there are no right answers. There, if you argue religion, there's no right answer because nobody's come back from that place. And then the other thing is politics. Both sides has their point of view, and that's why we don't talk about it because there is no winning on that situation.
Yeah.
But just getting back to that, I know we don't talk politics, but I think that's a problem with the country now. You got the left and you got the right, and nobody wants to meet in the middle anymore. The left has their view, the right has their view, and nobody's using common sense. And it's a government for the people.
I am going to make one of the first political statements on here. I think both sides are knuckleheads.
Oh, yeah.
I really do because they're stuck in their ways. Nobody can compromise.
Because they're not meeting in the middle.
Right. Jennifer, thank you so much for that question. I want to give a big shout out to our marquee sponsor. That's Toyota of Hackensack. We buy our cars from Toyota because we trust them. We don't trust everybody else. That's one of the worst things about being a cop. You just don't trust everybody. Yep. But Toyota of Hackensack, you go to toyotaofhackensack.com and let them find you a car. So, Dave, long drive up here.
Oh, yeah. 2.5 hours.
2.5 hours.
Yep.
Do you have to go through Philly?
Luckily, no. I got took the Commodore Barry and then ended up going on the Jersey Turnpike.
Yeah, they got all those weird names out in Pennsylvania.
I used to go to Commodore Barry. I went to Widener University for a little while.
Okay,
down in Chester, so
yep,
used to go to Commodore Barry all the time.
There you go.
I was almost going to go to Widener.
Well, you didn't make it in there. They only let us smart guys in there and good football players.
Yes. Well, that's probably the reason you hit me on that. That's why.
Where'd you go to? Fairly Ridiculous?
I went to Fairly Ridiculous in Madison. It's a great school. Hey, when I went to Fairly, it was top 5 rated in Playboy as a party school. Okay. So when I showed up there as a freshman, there was kegs sitting outside the door.
When he showed up, it dropped into the bottom 100.
No, I think it went up a couple notches when I was there. So tell us a little bit about yourself.
Quick background. I grew up with a single mom. Was raised in the Poconos. My dad.
Your mother is a friend of the show.
She is.
So this is like family
before.
again.
Yes. Well, everybody that comes on our show is family. And that's Professor T. Teresa Augusta Nelly. See, I got the name right. I had the toughest time saying your mother's name.
I'll bet.
He's Irish, so
I had to spell it out phonetically. And it's the names with the vowels at the end that I have the toughest time. It's just the Irish tongue doesn't work real well.
Yep.
And so
that's what she said.
We had another guest on. It took me. We did a 2-part episode with him, and I think it took me 2 hours in before I finally got his name right. So you're south of Philly, correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
So what do you do for a living?
I work in law enforcement.
Yeah. One of the now they do things a little differently in that area as far as hiring police, and it's a little foreign world because New Jersey, it's a competitive job market.
Yeah.
But they don't hire you like they bring in. Is it per diem or is it part time? What's the deal?
So the way they do it where I'm at is it's part time, full time. So you might work part time in a full time capacity. So you'll work full time hours just like all the other full time guys. You just don't get benefits or a pension or anything like that. Other departments will hire a guy and they work 2 or 3 shifts a week. Other guys are just as needed, where a full-time guy will call out or take a vacation. They need somebody to cover it.
How's that with training and everything?
It's very difficult.
Yeah, that's got to be rough.
Yeah, so that's why I had mentioned when I met with some people about trying to start a 501c3 for departments that say, hey, listen, we have a budget for our full-timers to train them, but we can't afford to train our part-timers. So, you know, the part-timers kind of get pushed to the side. And I'm like, all right, well, we do the same job. We do the same, have the same powers of arrest, and if needed, have to make those hard calls.
And you're also beholden to the same laws that every other police officer is beholden to, where you make an error, your ass is going to get nailed to the wall.
Correct.
And you're with a part-time partner that isn't as trained as you are. So he may not be as capable as a full-time employee.
Yeah, and that's why I've sought out so much training on my own time, out of my own pocket, because I believe that if you are going to be called to law enforcement, you need to be the best trained that you can.
So how do you like the job? I mean, you've been doing it for a while, right?
I started in 2011.
Oh, wow. So you got 11 years in. So what do you think of the job?
A lot has changed over, I'd say, the 10 years when I started. Things were a lot different. And now it's very much, you know, you need to remember you are being watched.
Every second of every day.
Yep. And I'm also an instructor at our Delaware County Vocational School. And where I teach there, I tell my students, you have to remember in this day and age, everything you do, you might have to give an accountability for. People have smartphones, Ring cameras, all kinds of stuff. Just remember that how you conduct yourself, how do you want that seen on the news?
Well, do you have dash cams and body cams down there?
We don't. So it's kind of hard. Some departments are getting them. Some are getting just dash cams. Some are getting body cams. Some are getting both.
Body cam, you know, I just heard something today, as a matter of fact, about the body cams. If you, and again, this goes back to a subjective police administration, if your body cam shuts off and they can, even if they have an inkling that you did it, you could be charged with a third-degree crime in New Jersey.
I heard that.
Wow.
Third-degree crime. So you're going to lose your job. You're going to go to jail for 5 years. That's a lot of responsibility. So it almost, unfortunately, the body cams, some people screwed it up for everybody, so we all got to pay the price.
Yep.
But what it does is it makes people hesitant to do their job.
Agreed.
And it takes discretion out.
Yeah. So I'm not a big fan of the body cams. I understand their need. I understand people's fears, where there's that third eye watching that objective third eye.
Transparency.
Yeah. So, you know, but I had never come in with body mics, but I came in. We didn't have MVRs in all the cars. We had them in a couple. When they came in all the cars, everybody was real hesitant. Everybody was real scared. But those MVRs, the dash cam microphones, they saved my butt. They never jammed me up. They saved my butt a lot.
Yep.
You know, because then it's not a he said, she said thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So, so what else you got going on?
Currently still working with some of our political leaders, trying to get something together for where we can bridge both sides, both Democrats, Republicans. I think it's time that we start addressing the mental health issue.
As far as it relates to guns, correct?
As far as it relates to guns, yeah. I mean, we want to blame all these other things, and we don't want to realize that it's a human issue. It's not a gun problem. It's not a bullet problem. It's a human problem. We have to start recognizing that there's a mental health crisis.
Let's say guns don't kill, humans do.
Correct.
You know, this is as damaging as a gun can be. The most damaging thing on the planet that is manufactured in the billions every day is this right here. Because this can do more damage to your character than most guns on a statistic level.
Correct.
You know, obviously, well, this could kill you. I've tried a couple times to do this. But anything put in the wrong hands can be seen as destructive. Anything. You know, obviously you weren't privy to the open because all you do is try to mess me up. You got something like prescription medication.
Yeah.
So prescription medication saves millions of lives. Prescription medication takes millions of lives. So
And it ruins millions of lives.
right, and you can go pencils, you can go food, you can go all different, the whole gamut of thing. The abuse of anything.
Yep.
And the abuse of guns. Guns seems to be the hot topic button right now because there's you know, the school shootings and things like that. So people are real hyper aware of everything that's going on. you know,
Isn't it really guns getting into the wrong hands?
I think
And I
that's
think that's
the case.
what we're all here about today.
You know, at its essence, the Second Amendment. Okay, I have a theory. Actually, I know what the Second Amendment was written for. You know, the Second Amendment is the right to bear arms.
Correct.
All right. Do you know? Tell us a little bit about why you think the founding fathers put that in the Constitution.
I think it's a twofold measure. It's one, it's to keep the government accountable to the people. And one, it's for the protection of that person as well. So it's the protection of life, liberty. I mean, that's why our forefathers had the vision to say, hey, we need to write some ideas and some laws out, just so we don't end up with the same rule that we had over in England and Britain.
So the reason that I read a lot of different things on this, is that was put in the Constitution to guard against a tyrannical government.
Correct.
So we never went back to what we had with England, the abuse. Less than protection. It was put in there primarily for that. And if you want my case in point to this, is in 1933, when the Nazi Party took over Germany, first thing Adolf Hitler did was take away all the private guns.
Correct.
And what does that do? All of a sudden, your citizens can't defend themselves. So there's the history lesson right there of why that amendment is so important. Now, that being said, because of my personal incident, I can't stand guns. Like, I don't like them. But that's me. I'm glad there are people who do.
Yep.
I really am glad there are people who do. So, I mean, are you personally, what's your personal feelings on guns?
Me personally, I grew up very pro Second Amendment. My family is very pro guns, pro Second Amendment, but they're also very pro training. We're not just going to give you a gun and say, here, go, shoot outside and shoot some cans. You're going to learn gun safety. You're going to learn proper handling of weapons. Our family, we learned if you got a temper, you shouldn't have a gun. It's one or the other.
You've been out drinking.
If you've been
You shouldn't have a gun.
If you've been out drinking, that to me is just common sense. If you're going to go out and have some drinks with some buddies and all that, leave your gun at home. If you're with a bunch of buddies, the last thing you need is to be drinking and then get into an altercation. Regardless of who starts the fight, you're the one that's going to look
It's
bad.
not going to end well.
No, it's not going to end well.
That's a rookie decision. And I hate to use that term rookie because I think it's a derogatory term. But a rookie, a new officer, will carry his gun. I swear they sleep with it.
24/7.
Yeah. Look at me. And they'll put the bulge. They'll put a polo shirt over it, and you can see the bulge in there. But all that's an ego thing.
And pronounce it. So,
Oh yeah.
Yeah. In today's day and age, that's not something you want to do all the time.
After 6 months on the job, I put that thing in the locker and kept it there because it just became a huge liability after that.
there are plenty of times I never took my gun home.
I left it in my locker at work.
Yeah,
I did.
I leave mine in my locker and then I just take my off-duty home.
Yeah, that's what I did.
And there's many of us that pretty much do the same thing.
Because I see the value for it. Like, I have a lot of deer in my neighborhood, so the one of the reasons why guns are good for me is I'll always have food.
Yeah, exactly.
So as a police officer, you've seen some pretty nasty calls with guns, some abuse of guns.
I have.
Do you have any that stand out?
I have several. One was back a couple months ago, which I was actually awarded a Life Save Award for saving a young man's life. He was shot in the abdomen and nearly lost his life. So as a young man under the age of 18, can't speculate or obviously talk about what happened, but he was shot in the abdomen. I was the first one on scene. And again, as I've said, I'm very big into training. I'm very big into, as a police officer, how many times are we the first ones there? We're there before fire. We're there before EMS usually, and we're the ones that have to start.
And it
making
usually feels
decisions.
like an hour before EMS gets there.
And
It's only a couple
really
minutes.
Is. You're
but
like,
it feels-
you're waiting to hear those sirens in the distance. And you're like, man, it's been forever. And in 2 minutes might have gone by.
But we have to see the worst of the worst. We have to deal with a gun, say, that might be in somebody's hand that it shouldn't be in. Illegal guns, specifically illegal guns, or guns in the hands of maybe somebody grabbed a legal gun that shouldn't have it.
Yeah.
There's a couple different theories that I have with that, but you being a police officer, you grew up one way. believing in the Second Amendment.
Yep.
You being a police officer, has it changed any of your views on guns?
I still say that people do have the right to own a gun, but responsibly and legally. You know, there's too many guns that are out there where people are. We see guns with obliterated serial numbers. Well, we know that's not a legal gun. But then people that are getting charged with gun crimes, they do negotiate a guilty pleas. They know that, you know what, they're probably going to get out in half the time. So it's like, where's the accountability start and where does it end with guns? I still say that I believe in the Second Amendment. I believe in an individual's right to own a gun, to carry a gun. I believe in a person's right for concealed weapons. But again, legally and responsibly.
Mike, you were a police officer for 20 years. You came into the job one way, and then you left another way. Did your view on guns change over that time?